Welcome to another explainer. You know that feeling when you kick off a brand new project? The whiteboard is totally clean, the team's pumped, the markers are uncapped, and all you want to do is jump straight into brainstorming? It's human nature. We want to dive into those brilliant, creative solutions on day one. It feels productive, it feels high energy, and it feels like we're doing the real work. But as we're going to see today, starting with solutions is probably the most dangerous thing you can do to your project's timeline and budget. Okay, so picture this. A gorgeous, highly creative, elaborate house. But it's built directly over a cracking sinkhole. That is literally the perfect metaphor for a project that completely skips the information phase. When you just start throwing out creative alternatives, but you're basing them on unverified assumptions or missing constraints or undocumented decisions from the past, you're building a sinkhole. The ideas might sound absolutely fantastic in the workshop, everyone's nodding, but underneath, the foundation is totally hollow. And eventually, that beautiful idea is going to just collapse under its own weight the second it makes contact with reality. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at the contrast. On the left, we've got assumption-driven value engineering. This is where your team just starts generating ideas based on whatever everyone happens to already believe about the project's scope, cost, and limits. That's our fragile sinkhole. On the right, we have information-driven value engineering. This is your solid, reinforced concrete foundation. This is when the team actually spends dedicated time upfront documenting exactly what the project is before anyone pitches a single idea. The difference is night and day. Sinkhole ideas die a very late, very expensive death. Foundation ideas survive because they're anchored in verified facts. I hear this question all the time from engineers, project managers, and designers. Why can't we just start brainstorming? Look, I get it. Gathering information feels like a drag. It feels like boring bureaucracy. Sitting in a room, digging up old permits, reading past design decisions, and crunching cost baselines, it really feels like it's slowing down the actual creative problem solving. It is totally natural to feel impatient. But that impatience is a massive trap. This quote hits the nail on the head. A value engineering team doesn't usually fail because they're uncreative. We're smart people. We come up with great ideas. Where a team actually fails is by being brilliantly creative about the exact wrong problem. If you skip gathering the info, you might waste 20 hours optimizing a component that isn't even driving your costs, or proposing a redesign that literally violates a regulatory permit. An hour spent verifying the facts today is going to save you weeks of chasing doomed ideas tomorrow. Module 1.6, The Antidote, the Project Information Matrix. Pillar 1, Scope and Cost Baseline. Getting this first pillar established is absolutely crucial. Think of it as the first layer of structural rebar in our foundation. Without strict boundaries on scope, creative ideas will 100% drift into areas nobody actually funded your team to touch. Plus, you just can't improve the value of a design if you don't know exactly where the money is currently going. Take a look at this real-world example, the P204 booster pump station. Notice how it's broken down? Equipment is 33%, piping 17%, installation 16%, civil 13%, and instrumentation and electrical is 21%. Doing this saves you from the dangerous lump sum trap. If I just give you a single budget total of $5.6 million, you have zero idea where to start saving. But when you see the money broken down like this, you know exactly where the big bucks sit, which gives you a real baseline to measure every future creative idea against. Pillar 2, Constraints. If Pillar 1 was the foundation, Pillar 2 acts as your load-bearing walls. Let's run through these 4 categories real quick. First, technical constraints, like maximum pressure ratings for a pipe tie-in. Second, regulatory constraints, so things like mandatory environmental setbacks or flood contours. Third, schedule constraints. Think fixed turnaround windows for a plant shutdown. And fourth, budget constraints, like a hard, sanctioned capital ceiling. These are the 4 walls of your project. They define the literal space your creative team is allowed to plan, and they remain absolutely true no matter which alternative your team ends up going with. But here's the catch, and it's a big one: the golden rule of constraints. I guarantee you, in almost every project meeting, someone's going to cross their arms and confidently declare, yeah, we can't do that. Well, if someone says that, it is not a real constraint unless they can back it up. Every single constraint has to trace back to a real code clause, a specific permit line, or a named source. If an assumption is just masquerading as a constraint and nobody bothers to challenge it, you might accidentally wall off your best possible solution based on nothing but a rumor. Pillar 3, Stakeholders. Every project function eventually serves someone, right? So figuring out the interests and the influence of everyone impacted by your scope is vital. Look at how we've laid this out. We list the stakeholder, their core interest, and their level of influence.
For example, operations needs uninterrupted throughput during cutover, and process safety needs overpressure protection preserved. Both have high influence, and here is a crucial point. High influence does not mean they're the loudest voice in the room. Process safety or finance might not say a single word for 3 weeks, but if your brilliant idea violates their core interest, they have the power to just override and kill the entire proposal late in the game. You absolutely have to map them out early.
Pillar 4, requirements, risks, and prior decisions. Think of this pillar as the curing agent that finally sets the concrete. This is what stops your team from endlessly re-arguing old battles that have already been settled. I'm telling you, failing to document the why behind past choices is the single biggest time waster in project workshops. If you write down that a prior design decision was made, but you leave out the rationale, you are practically guaranteeing that your team is going to waste hours trying to overturn it. Like, say you note an in-place pump upgrade was rejected 2 years ago. Someone is definitely going to suggest it again. But if you document why it was rejected, say because the soil couldn't support the bearing load, boom, the debate ends instantly. The rationale is what saves you. So it all boils down to this: does the rationale still hold? Honestly, this is arguably the single most valuable question a facilitator can ask in a workshop. It tests whether an old assumption is a solid fact or just a stale sinkhole. If that soil bearing limit from 2 years ago is still true today, great, you move on. But actually, scratch that. What if new technology means the bearing load isn't an issue anymore? Suddenly, a door that was totally shut swings wide open. Testing the rationale is exactly how you safely uncover hidden opportunities.
The collapse versus the successful build.
We've got our 4 pillars, so let's see how these two approaches play out in reality. Look at this timeline of a catastrophic collapse. The team skipped the information matrix and went straight to idea generation on day 1. By week 4, they've got this beautiful, highly creative alternative. They pitch it to the client, everyone is thrilled. But then week 5 hits. While they're trying to start implementation, someone uncovers a critical regulatory permit condition that they completely missed, all because they didn't do their Pillar 2 constraint gathering. By week 6, the whole beautiful idea dies in 5 minutes. Weeks of work completely wasted, all because they built on a sinkhole. Which brings us to the core thesis of this entire explainer. The information phase does not slow the project down. I know it feels like administrative overhead, I know the room gets impatient, but dedicating the time up front to structure your baseline, constraints, stakeholders, and past decisions, it's actually the only way to fiercely protect your timeline. You aren't wasting time, you are literally buying insurance against a total collapse. By anchoring your project to a validated 4-pillar foundation, you guarantee one incredibly important thing. You ensure that when your team's creative alternatives are finally unveiled in that client presentation, they actually survive contact with the real world. They don't fail a safety review, they don't blow past some hidden budget constraint, and they don't trigger a compliance violation. The ideas work because the foundation is real. So I'm going to leave you with a final provocative thought here. Think about the project you're working on right now. Think about that brainstorming session you have scheduled for next week. Are you building your next brilliant idea on a sinkhole of assumptions? Or are you taking the time to pour a solid 4-pillar project information matrix foundation? Doing the boring work first is the real secret to making sure your brilliant ideas actually get built. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I hope this leaves you eager to master the rest of the value engineering process.